Hi there, Potion Masters, chapter 38. It's kind of a long one. Bolter kept his hands on the wheel as the Subaru sped up the winding road towards the massive BREW headquarters. He wasn't steering, but he didn't want to raise any questions as they passed through the security checkpoints. The guard at the first outpost checked Bolter's and Zelda's badges. Bolter received a temporary pass for Max. "I have a special companion with me today," Bolter said to the guard, his voice shaky and uneven. "And I have a few friends arriving later," he added. "This document should give them all the appropriate clearance." He handed a man a small piece of paper that Zelda had previously doused with a potion made from Esmeralda's recipe. The guard perused the document, his forehead furrowing in confusion. "I'm not sure what this is," he said, his voice low and somewhat threatening. Bolter swallowed. You should be able to scan it, I believe. Just there in your computer." He glanced nervously at Zelda. The green-haired elixirist shrugged. The guard studied Bolter for a moment, his one hand clutching the doctored paper, his other hand fingering the knob of his radio. Gordy held his breath, fearing the worst. If the guard spooked and called for reinforcements, no one would be allowed onto the premises. That meant horrible things would happen to Adeline. After a grueling pause, the guard turned to his computer and ran the paper through a scanning device. An approving chirp sounded from the monitor, and after typing a few strokes on his keyboard, the man returned to the Subaru. "Gordon Ethan Stitzer, Jr.," he said, ducking down to peer into the back seat. "Is that you?" Gordy nodded and rolled down his window to accept the pass the guard handed him. The words printed on the upper right-hand corner of the badge announced his level 4 clearance. Bolter waved at the guard as they drove past. "That went surprisingly smooth," he said. "Yes, unfortunately," Zelda added. "I had hoped that a tainted document would have set off the highest alarm." Gordy didn't say anything. He understood why Zelda felt that way. They were about to hand over a deadly weapon to a horrible dark elixirist who would then have the power to destroy BREW, the vessel, and everything good his mom had worked for. The world would change for the worse, but at the moment, all Gordy wanted to do was save Adeline and her folks. That was all that mattered. "Your mom works here?" Max asked as they approached the south entrance of the building. He stared up at the high walls, bewildered. "It's that kooky cream and oil place. Somnium." "I know," Gordy said. "I told you that." He strained his ears to hear Zelda and Bolter, who were whispering to each other in the front seat. "Yeah, but I didn't really think BREW was inside that building," Max said. "Oh, man." Max whined, gawking down at his side. Gordy watched as Max's third arm began to fizzle rapidly. Fortunately, Max didn't show any signs of pain from the change, though he twitched and spasmed a bit. Max groaned and giggled and flapped his extra limb like a wing until it dissolved completely, leaving only a hole in his shirt where the arm had burst free. Bolter pulled into a parking stall and turned off the engine. The Subaru whined and hissed, and the radio died. Gordy turned his seat and watched a pair of headlights attached to a white SUV approach the front security gate. Another car followed closely behind it, more of Esmeralda's thugs, Gordy assumed. The vehicles proceeded without incident, pausing only briefly at each security post before heading to the south end of the building and vanishing from sight. Gordy checked the time on the dashboard clock. 3:10. 20 minutes until showtime. He felt his stomach tighten. What was he going to do? How could he stop Esmeralda from carrying out her plan? He may have been a skilled dram, even a borderline elixirist, but in this situation, Gordy felt like the most incompetent person alive. If only they had managed to completely subdue Esmeralda back at the house. Prevented her from moving somehow. Gordy slumped in his seat. He should have at least kept eyes on that crafty Russian and stopped him from stealing off to the Rivera's house. "Why not blotch us?" Zelda hissed at Bolter under her breath. "Why go to all this trouble, then risk the chance that we try to stop her, which we fully intend to do?" Zelda's brows furrowed, and she kept checking the contents of her satchel, ensuring she had some sort of weapon to protect her. "Had she expertly blotched us, we could have entered BREW months ago and carried out her plan. We'd be none the wiser until we awoke in shackles. Who are we to Esmeralda?" Bolter fired back. "She had no idea of our involvement until tonight. Besides, she needed the elixir first. I suspect, had Priscilla sent her delivery to one of us instead of the Stitzers, we'd be having an entirely different conversation right now." "Why not blotch the boy then?" Zelda asked. She tried, Gordy said. Bolter and Zelda glanced over their shoulders. When she came to my house the first night, she blotched my dad instead with her business card. But not you? Zelda peered back, a brightly painted eyebrow raised inquisitively. That's because she underestimated Gordy Stitzer, Bolter said, giving Gordy a wink. How could a child cause so much trouble? Well, she won't be making that mistake again. Here we go. Zelda nodded at the clock. Time to move. The four of them exited the car and headed for the south entrance of the building. After dropping Zelda and Max off on the first level, Bolter accompanied Gordy through the building to the elevator. He didn't say much. Once or twice, Bolter attempted to give Gordy some sort of instruction on how to thwart Esmeralda, but each time he shook it away, dismissing it with a wave of his nubbed hands. It was too dangerous, not worth risking Gordy's life or the lives of the Riveras. It will be all right, Gordy, Bolter insisted. This is just a hiccup. BREW will bounce back and we will increase our security. Criminals like Esmeralda have singularly tracked minds. She plays the game one move at a time, and this will be her downfall. But if she destroys the vessel, Gordy said, we won't have a way to counter any of her moves. Bolter's nostrils flared. Indeed. Well, there's nothing to do with it now. Patience, my friend, he patted Gordy on the shoulder, and this is as far as I go. As the elevator doors closed, Gordy felt the floor drop downward, and an uncomfortable pit formed in his stomach. This was it. He was alone now, and with nothing other than the elixir in his pocket. No potions or ingredients to whip something up in a pinch. The elevator stopped and the doors opened. Hello, friend, Yeltsin pulled Gordy by his arm out of the elevator and then sprang into the empty space, checking all four corners. That's a good boy, he said, once he had ensured the room was secure. You brought present, no? No, I mean yes, Gordy answered. He crammed his hand into his pocket, but Yeltsin stopped him. No, you bring me the elixir to her. It will mean more. He motioned for Gordy to hold up his hands, and when he did a quick pat down, frisking him for any weapons. Where's Adeline? Gordy demanded. Where are her parents? Shush. Yeltsin held his finger up to his lips. Then he pointed down to where the glow from the vessel poured through the glass window, lighting up the end of the hallway. Gordy Stitzer, welcome. Esmeralda clapped her hands together. She stood at the back of the room, along with a couple of other people, all of whom wore coats and had beards. Apparently no one in Esmeralda's company ever shaved. The vessel rested upon its crystal pedestal, the silvery liquid roiling within the cup. Esmeralda had constructed a mini lab beside it, consisting of 2 Bunsen burners heating a limestone cauldron. A collection of exotic ingredients was lined up along the bench. Gordy recognized a few of them instantly. He saw scorpion stingers and a jar of cobra hoods swimming in some sort of pickling solution. Gordy also noticed what looked like an egg with red veins. Here's a picture. Esmeralda saw him eyeing the assortment. She pointed to the egg. It's an epizootic egg. The Mapuche shamans from Chile use them to capture diseases from the sick. Very rare and highly toxic. All of that stuff is, Gordy said. Other than the scorpion stingers, most of the items on the bench were illegal throughout the potion community. You're right. The potion I tend to make requires such ingredients, but the most important will be that one in your pocket. Yes, Gordy, you may show it to me now. Esmeralda's 2 companions moved away from her to stand behind Gordy, blocking his escape. Gordy started to reach for the elixir, but stopped. Where are my friends? They are safe, Esmeralda said. Once we make the potion and pour it into the vessel, you'll be free to leave with them. I want to see them now, or I won't give it to you. She rolled her eyes. You do realize you don't have much wiggle room here, don't you? She turned to Yeltsin. Bring them to me. The Russian left the room, and a few minutes later, Adeline and her parents appeared in the hallway, looking through the glass pane at Gordy. Adeline half smiled. Both she and her parents were bound in a thick rope. They looked to be all right, though Mr. and Mrs. Rivera could have melted the glass with the angry lasers shooting from their eyes. Now, Gordy, this particular draught requires dual mixing. Do you know what that means? Esmeralda sounded almost like a teacher giving instructions. If Gordy hadn't known her words to be laced with venom, he would have thought she seemed rather pleasant. It means you need someone else to help you put in the ingredients, Gordy answered. Very good. She batted her eyelashes at Gordy. What, me? He blurted. I'm not helping you make that. Get one of your goons to do it. She frowned. I would, but I need my goons to guard the entrance and make sure your friends stay put. And, to be honest, I need someone with a deft hand. Someone I can trust to perform everything flawlessly. Gordy scoffed. I'll mess it up on purpose. Would you? Esmeralda gestured to the window. If your friend's life depended on it, would you be so careless? On cue, Yeltsin moved behind Adeline and placed his hands on her shoulders. Gordy tensed, his anger boiling up inside of him. Get your hands off her. We're typically not the violent sort. I hope you understand that. However, we have grown desperate. Do you love your parents? Of course you do, Esmeralda answered for him. And so do I. But I haven't seen my parents in quite some time, and I miss them immensely. I need this potion to work in order to have a reunion with them. If that requires a little blood on my hands, so be it. But it doesn't have to be that way. What do you want me to do? Gordy lowered his eyes to the cauldron. Simple. I'll perform all the ceremonial pieces. You just have to add the proper dosages on my cues. No mistakes, though, or you'll force my hand, or rather Yeltsin's hand. Understood? Esmeralda increased the heat on the burners, the left side hotter than the right. She snapped her fingers and sprinkled dried poison oak into the mixture. After waiting a few moments, she nodded to Gordy. The jellyfish tentacles, all of them, but one by one from the container, she instructed. Gordy obeyed, and after the third tentacle dropped into the cauldron, the potion changed from yellow to a pale pink. Esmeralda reduced the heat on both burners and added several cobra hoods, whispering something to each one as they fell. She snipped the barbs from the nightshade stems with a pair of copper shears and then stirred the potion with one of the scorpion stingers. It was the most elaborate brewing Gordy had ever witnessed. So many steps, so many dangerous ingredients. He was told to pour in a vial of sea snake venom, and then, when she sprinkled in more poisonous herbs, he inserted the tip of a rusty railroad spike into the center of the cauldron. Gordy bit his lip in concentration, partly because he feared what would happen once they arrived at the conclusion, and partly because of the complicated procedure. Finally, Esmeralda picked up the epizootic egg and held it high above her head. She began to chant as she lowered the egg and cracked the shells with her thumbs. Ooze dripped out, followed by a sickening black yolk. The potion began to bubble, the cauldron rattling against the burners. Gordy, Esmeralda whispered, uncork the eternity elixir and, on my mark, pour it in. As if sensing Gordy's possible defiance, she shot him a warning glare. Don't do anything stupid. Think about your friends. Gordy's chest ached, and he looked one final time at the window. Adeline stood there, staring back at him, Yeltsin's imposing frame towering over her and her parents. I'm sorry, Gordy mouthed to her. Then Adeline winked. Gordy paused in confusion. Was it a twitch? A nervous impulse? No, it had been a distinct gesture. Adeline had winked as though she was trying to tell him something. Suddenly, Adeline shook away Yeltsin's massive hands from her shoulders and spun around. The Russian glared at her, but as he reached for her, Adeline hauled off and kicked him sharply on the knee. Yeltsin yelled out in surprise, and then something struck him on the chin and shattered. A cloud of gas enveloped his bewildered face as he collapsed, vanishing from the window. Gordy watched in amazement as Adeline appeared to kick the giant Russian once again while he lay on the floor. Then, before she could explain what was happening, she wriggled out of the rope binding her, grabbed her parents by the arm, and raced away from the room. Esmeralda looked at the window in confusion. What is this? She demanded. Caldwell, Drummond, go find out what's going on. It was then that both Gordy and Esmeralda realized her other two henchmen were missing from the room as well. But there was somebody else there. Wanda Stitzer stepped from the shadows, a vial of potion clasped in her hand. Mom? Gordy gasped. Esmeralda didn't hesitate. She plunged her hand into her satchel and then into the bubbling cauldron. Before Wanda could toss her weapon, Esmeralda slipped behind Gordy and held something at his throat. Gordy felt the tip of a needle grazing his skin. Esmeralda had filled a syringe with the poisonous potion. Don't! Wanda held up her hand. Drop it, Esmeralda ordered. Whatever it is you're holding, I want to see it on the floor in 3, 2. She took the syringe, and Gordy's mom immediately knelt and set the vial on the ground. Very good. Hello, Wanda. We've never formally been introduced. My name is... I know who you are, Wanda interrupted. You're not alone, are you? Wanda shook her head. My sister Priscilla took out the rest of your thugs with Adeline's help. Of course. She nodded at Gordy. That girl's got spunk. I like her. Gordy didn't know what to say. He had no idea Adeline could be so aggressive. I'm impressed, Esmeralda said. Did you have a pleasant stay in Greenland? Quite. Gordy could feel the tip of the syringe trembling and could sense Esmeralda's trepidation. She was terrified. Good, Gordy thought. Let's see how she likes squaring off with one of the greatest elixirs in the world. Now let my son go, his mom said. Esmeralda clicked her tongue. Oh, I don't think so. I need him to finish what we started. Gordy glanced down at the eternity elixir still in his fingers. The cork had been removed, and the pearly liquid shimmered in the vial. You're not leaving this place tonight, Mrs. Stitzer said. Of course I am. Once we complete my potion and drop it into the vessel, you'll have no power over me, no ability to brew or concoct a weapon. You knew this, didn't you? She asked. Gordy stared at his mom, unsure of what Esmeralda meant. It makes no difference to me, Gordy's mom said. With or without my abilities, I will still put a stop to you. What's she talking about, Mom? Gordy asked. Esmeralda chuckled. Oh, my dear Gordy, soon, very soon, you shall be the only elixirist in your family. But that won't last long if your mother tries to prevent my escape. I'll end his life, Wanda, and I won't lose any sleep over it. Gordy watched his mom. He could see her softening. There was nothing she could do from across the room. If she tried to throw anything at Esmeralda, the woman would jab Gordy with a needle. Everything about that wicked potion screamed of death. The jellyfish, the stingers, the weird egg. One drop of that potion in Gordy's veins, and it would be all over. We were just about to conclude, Esmeralda continued. Why don't you take a seat and watch? I'd be interested to know any sensations you feel as your abilities are swept away. The destruction of the vessel will only affect a select few at BREW, Wanda said, lowering herself to the ground. The others will come after you for what you've done. They won't stop until they've captured you. Yes, but I'll be long gone by then, and I'll have company. She squeezed Gordy's arm. Gordy, if you don't mind, it's time to pour in the elixir. Gordy looked down once more at the vial. There really wasn't much to it. A simple glass container and some liquid. He had no idea how to do all the things Bolter said it could do. Gordy rolled the vial between his fingers, making the potion swirl. Could the elixir do anything by itself? Gordy glanced up at his mom. I'm sorry. His voice caught in his throat. It's not your fault, dear, she said. I'm so proud of how brave you've been. You know how I said you would have become a great elixirist one day. Well, I was wrong. You're already there. But I don't want you to lose your powers, his mom smiled warmly. It won't be all that bad. Maybe you could teach me again. That would be fun. And besides, it will give me more to talk with your father about. Come on, boy, Esmeralda forced Gordy to face the cauldron. Hurry up. Gordy's shoulders slumped. He took a deep breath, lifted the eternity elixir, and poured the potion directly into his mouth. End of chapter 38.